It's 7:03. I'm going to call the meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. Our first item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would recognize Selectman Nordell to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All members of the Board of Selectmen are present. Our next item of business is the approval of the meeting minutes from August 5th, 2021.
I'll make a motion to accept the regular meeting minutes of Thursday, August 5th, 2021, for discussion.
Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion or corrections?
On page 17, where it says, let the record show, the recording secretary left the in-person meeting day 20, and the sound didn't go.
Yeah.
So the motion was made by me to accept the tax settlement between the town of East Windsor and New Construction LLC, and seconded by Sarah.
Yes.
Passed unanimously.
Any other corrections? All those in favor of the minutes as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe it was about 9:50.
Yeah,
Okay.
We adjourned at 9:48, so it's probably about.
it was 9:47. It was 43 seconds. We were out.
47 sounds right. I just rounded off the closest.
All those opposed? Minutes carried as amended. Public participation. This is one of the public's two opportunities to address the Board of Selectmen on matters that may be appropriate. First, I'll ask if there are any members in the public who would like to address the board, and then I'll ask if there are members who are, if there's anybody who is joining us online. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board? Any members of the public? Is there anybody online who would like to address the board? Anyone online? Okay, we'll have another opportunity later in the meeting. I don't have any communications today. We do have one resignation. Sarah Andrews from the Board of Education.
Move to accept the resignation of Sarah Andrews from the Board of Education with regret.
Is there a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say, whatever Sarah decides to do in the future, I'm sure she'll do it as well as she did in the position that she held. And I just want to thank her publicly for her service.
I agree. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay, next item is 8D, an update on the erase grant. Mr. Kribda, nice to see you in person.
Always happy.
It's always good to be seen. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's well. I'm pleased to report that we have completed 76 of the applications so far. And that would, if the board agrees, total an expenditure of $733,600. We still have 33 applications that have not been completed, and there is no backlog. I'm waiting for information on all of them. I believe the first selectman has some items to bring before you, which will affect the exact numbers and percentages, but I would say we're hovering around 70% complete.
So in the, George and I met with Lily earlier this week to talk about how he was coming with the review, and there were a couple of questions that we needed some policy determinations on. And so I'll start with, how does this board want to handle applications that were received after the deadline?
How far after we're talking about?
Same day, significantly after, like 10:45 or something.
If I might interject, I believe it was 8 minutes late.
Whoa, what was the one that was at 10:45? Was that just follow-up information?
That was follow-up information.
I stand corrected. So only a couple minutes late, apparently.
I don't have. an
I don't have an
issue
issue with it.
I don't. Okay.
Then that would bring the number to 109 applications before you.
Right, 109 applications. We had previously allocated $900,000 from the American Rescue Plan Act funding for the town to be spent on this, inclusive of George's time and Lily's time. So assuming that the remainder of those applications were fully funded and full $10,000 grants, we would be in excess of the funding that we have available. So we have a couple of choices. The two most obvious ones are increase the funding that we would designate for this project to cover an up to amount based on what he still has outstanding, or prorate the applications that we have. And that will have an impact on the review that George needs to do moving forward. So the question is, do we want to increase the available funding or stick with the number we have? And that is the number that we have.
Thought it was my understanding that there were a few applicants who didn't request the full amount.
There were.
Okay, so that still puts us over.
Yeah, it was a few applicants that didn't request the full amount.
Okay,
If I might interject, it amounts to a $23,000 difference.
okay.
You're saying we need an additional 23,000, that's it?
No, 23,000 is the difference in full funding. So we have 76 applications, there would be 760,000. Instead, there's 733,600.
So you could extrapolate that out to say we would need about $1,070,000 plus staff time.
I just want to throw out there, I haven't made my decision yet, but I know that when we first established the program, we based it upon what we thought we were getting from the government.
Yeah.
So we went with the 900,000, and we found out later we were receiving way more than what we had anticipated. And I think the papers reported 25% of what we collected, we put into the program.
It's about that, yeah.
So just throw that out there when you're considering whether or not you want to prorate or if you want to increase the amount. But I don't know if we earmarked any of that on the money.
No, as where the rest of the funding stands, we initially thought we were going to receive 1.2 million, 1.185 million from the federal government through the ARP. We set up this program, we parked about $900,000 for this and the remainder for a water project in a community, on a community well that's failing. Then when the county allocations came out for non-entitlement units, which is what any town below 100,000 population is, the way that came out, we're going to get a total of about 3.4 and change, almost $3.5 million. So we have allocated 1.2 of 3.4. We don't have all of that yet. We have 1.7 million of it now. The second payment, the second 1.7 will be paid in June of next year. We have until the end of 2024 to commit the funds and until the end of 2026 to actually spend the funds. The spending availability can only be done on 5 different categories: small business, nonprofit, and household assistance, tourism, sewer, water, and broadband, hazard pay for frontline employees, and revenue recapture for municipalities. So one of the outstanding questions that I still am hoping for some resolution to is if radio systems constitute that hard infrastructure component of it. We have a radio system that's about 80% past its useful life. Not 80% of its useful life, 80% past its useful life. So that's a significant cost potentially that if this money were available, we could use it for. That said, could we spend another $200,000 and make the program whole? Certainly we could do that.
Can I just work through the math with you?
Sure.
To make sure? So you started with 900,000. And there are 34 left outstanding. So that would be, well, I'm sorry, let's figure it a different way. What is the number that you think is the number that completes?
Based on our conversation the other day, I thought it was $1,070,000 less staff time.
So 109 total applications.
Yep.
Times 10,000 each.
Mhm.
Okay,
109 times 10,000 each is $1,090,000.
and,
But there's also that $23,000 difference,
okay,
which gets you to the 10,070,000 less your
actually,
staff.
to do that math, not off the top of my head. So if it's 700, it would have been 760,000. And I've said that it was 733,600.
That's a difference of 167.
Right. You mean 167,000
Plus staff time.
plus
Plus
that.
that.
Yeah, so another 200,000 would do it.
Okay,
So do you guys want to commit the additional funds to that, or do you want to prorate based on what we've already committed? My recommendation would be to just fund the program.
If we go ahead and increase the amount for that, we still have enough for that well that's what needs to be.
Yes.
And they'll have enough to cover, well, hopefully cover the, we get approval on the radio system.
Yes. Well, it depends on if it's an $8 million radio system, then no, but you know, the
But it's a substantial amount.
we did an RFP for the radio research. The consultants are in place doing their analysis to find out what the best pathway is. And we also have bond capacity that's available, which is what we had set out on that path, to have bond capacity available before we knew we were going to get federal money. So I'm not concerned about doing another 200,000 for this. Leaves us in that disadvantageous position for any plans that we have.
You want to make a motion that we increase the $900,000 allocated to the race grant program by an additional 200,000 plus staff time?
Second it.
Any discussion?
I think it's the way to go. I mean, the intent was to help everybody that needed help. And so I think that's obviously the way to go.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So the next question is how to handle multiple applicants from the same person. George, can you explain a bit more about this? There were a couple that had multiple applications, right?
yes, but they're for different business entities.
Right.
And not being an attorney, I'm not sure whether you can distinguish between them if they're legitimate business entities, each operating, it used to be called being industrious. So I don't believe, from what I can see, and again, I don't do great investigative work. I ask questions and I take people at their word, that those are independent entities created for specific purposes, and whether it's taxes or liability or whatever, they're not, while owned by the same person, they're not really commingling as I can make out.
So this is not the example, but as an example, if I were to own 4 Dunkin' Donuts in town and apply for the grant for each Dunkin' Donuts, but I'm the same owner and the same signatory, would that be an allowable application for each of those businesses versus one signatory? And again, that is not the example. I'm not poisoning the well here. That is not what happened. But I'm just using that as the easiest frame of reference. because we have a
I
bunch.
think a little twist on it that would make it clearer is that it isn't actually a franchise situation. It's
Right.
2 independent.
Right, and each one takes in a different profit margin over the year. So, the one on 140 may be not doing as well as the one on Route 5 or vice versa.
But they seem to be 2 different
They're-
legal entities.
Right. And I'm sure if you look up on the state website, you find each and every one of those have a separate address with the licensing that requires them to do that. And I don't know if you check the licensing.
Well, I know that just on the application, they come from different addresses, same person, different addresses, same website.
And I don't know who has applied, but I know in town that there's a family that has at least two businesses being run out of the same household, but one is the wife's business and one is the husband's business.
That is
So-
another example,
You know,
yes.
so if they're registered with the state separately, as two separate, and they're paying taxes on two separate entities, and I don't see why they wouldn't fall under the program.
I don't think that requires a vote, but if there is a consensus, then that's how we'll proceed.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
But I'm not an attorney, so I don't know if you want to just,
Well, as long as we're following what the outlines of the
Yeah.
interim final rule,
And I think
it's,
we are.
the conditions are ours to
Okay.
create, so.
I'm good with it.
The last point that I wanted to bring up is one of the things that we have tried to do is to help empower people and get them to yes. You know, the goal is to actually get this money into the businesses and the nonprofits that were impacted by the pandemic. So Georgia spent a lot of time doing outreach, asking for further clarification, asking, well, did you do this when, or did you do that? Or were there circumstances where this had to happen, to try and further validate the applications that have come in. But the downside of doing it that way, particularly if we're going to fund the program fully, is we got to bring this to a close at some point. You know, so at what point is it your last shot to get the clarifying information in before we say, okay, we're going to start issuing and processing some checks here? So do we want to leave this open for, how much longer is he going to be chasing down 40 or so outstanding applicants?
I thought when we did the program, we said it was going to run from this date to that date. I thought we picked a date in September. That was September.
We did the application period from July 12th to August 9th, and then we had a target date of issuing the checks by Labor Day. But there's some work that he needs to do, and then we need to actually vote to appropriate the money to the individual recipients, preferably on September 2nd. But whatever that is, he needs to have time to actually do the work and bring it to a close.
And I think you need time to, you know, whatever we decide is the cutoff, we need to provide enough time to send everybody some sort of communication saying, hey, look, you've got till September 30 or whatever, or you're out. So, you know, if we don't get your stuff by September 30 or whatever, you know, so it has to be, I think, more than a couple of weeks. I guess what I'm saying, and September 30 seems about in the area, but I'm not stuck in the date, but it's got to be enough time for them to get a letter.
So with the full funding, well, we're doing everything by email. With the full funding, we can start issuing checks. We can do an initial approval run September 2nd, and then have some additional time to aggregate more information as may be necessary. Right?
Well, yes, I want the board to know, my intention is to bring this in by Labor Day.
Yeah, that's
I mean, if I've got 10 people that are outstanding, I'm gonna knock on doors. I mean, I'm gonna try to keep the commitment, so I'm good with whatever the board decides. My intention is to bring it in on Labor Day.
I would say if they reached out to those individuals already once, reach
I
out to
have.
them again and say that the project is due to close at such a date, so at this time frame, whatever end of August you want, in order for you to do your due diligence, you need a commitment from them to give you the information, or they're going to be excluded. I mean, give somebody 2 weeks or 4 weeks, you're still going to procrastinate till the end.
Right.
And longer he's on board, the more that time.
Well, the other thing we could do with the Labor Day target in mind, we could ask George to continue doing as he's been doing and see how many are outstanding on September 2nd, and then make a determination as to when enough is enough.
And then if there's only a few left and they're struggling, then we could do, you got a grace period of excess amount of time, and then program ends. You could do it that way if you want.
I would very much like to complete this list.
Yep.
I would hate to have someone I would hate to have someone disqualified because of the strife in their life that we're trying to alleviate. So I'm going to work, I'll give you an example. The other day, there was an applicant who didn't provide a email address. So I physically went there and talked to them and explained, and the very next day, the information was sent to the first selectman's office. So You know, if I have to do that, I'll do that. I have no backlog. So right now, you know, I'm doing that. And I'd rather be doing something rather than just sitting there waiting. So I'm not billing you for waiting, but I'd like to be efficient. I mean, you know, just, I want to process them as they come in. I want to move it along. I want to keep the momentum going. And if necessary, I'm going to make personal visits if that's okay with the board.
I encourage it. I went to 65 businesses when it was open.
Well, that's, I think, you know, given that the amount of time you spent trying to get people to apply, I don't want to see any of those folks disqualified because of the time factor. And I'm feeling confident that, you know, if let me just say this, if there are some still outstanding, it's because there was absolutely no cooperation. It won't be because there wasn't effort.
So is our next meeting September 2nd?
Yeah.
So why don't we pen until September 2nd and see where he's at, and then we can make a decision based upon what you have left. At your leadership, if you're the one that's handling it.
We'll also,
I think I am. We'll never know sometimes.
we'll also review his recommendations and make a vote on those at that point in time and start getting things processed. Was there anything else we needed to cover on this?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Are there any other questions or?
George has been putting in a ton of work. You can see from the binders of documentation he's put together that he has not been idle.
George, can you think of an instance where we're asking for information that could take a certain business longer than 30 days to come up with?
I really don't think so. So what I do is, so people write and they tell you their story, which contains none of the information you need to make the judgments. So then I have learned, so there are different ways of going about it. One is by need, the other is by damage. And damage is a lot easier to figure out than need. So I have come up with a list of very specific questions to ask. Did they have any physical plant changes to further enable social distancing? And if they did, what's the cost of that? What did they pay for cleaning solutions? What did they pay for PPE? So I give them a list of items and they fill those in. And 90% of the time, that comes to over the $10,000 grant. So at that point, when I hit the 10,000 number and a little bit more, you know, bang, zoom, they're in, and I don't go any further. I don't write any more information, even though there might be information available, because that's just padding the bill, really. So I stop at the 10,000 when I think I have been convinced. There have been a few times that it's hovering around the mark, but there's language in the act that talks about being generally proportional to the damage done. I think the damage done is always worse than they think it is. It's still going on. You know, customers still aren't returning to the shop. So that's an easy thing in my mind to justify. And I have to be honest with you, except for a few that are a little, let's just say I haven't gotten the right responses yet from them, because I'm trying to get everybody to the number that they think is the number that is their damage. And not everyone has asked for the 10,000. So, you know, but what I would say is, with how easy it's been to get to that number in these cases, there was a lot of damage done to the businesses in this town and to the nonprofits. So to be able to come up with that number without working too hard just indicates that it's a lot worse than that, in my mind. Anyway, I thank the board for its time.
We do, Marie raised the point. You and I had talked about it, but she raised it, so I'll come back to it. There was a question of the tax delinquencies. So when we first talked about this, we collectively decided that if the pandemic was one of the reasons that a business or a nonprofit hadn't met their tax obligation, we didn't want that to be a disqualifying consideration. I had the tax collector look at not just current delinquencies, but historic delinquencies as well. And so the question is, and I think we've already answered this, but Marie raised it, so I'll revisit it again. Do we want to have that be a consideration in the determination of the awards or not? When George and I discussed this the other day, our collective recollection was that we decided not to consider that. But if we want to revisit that or think about it, we need to do that tonight as well. But not all at once.
Well, yeah, you know, this money is federal money.
Yep.
And it's being given for those reasons that were listed, and I think that goes above and beyond the local tax liability that's here, and who knows, maybe they choose to pay their taxes with that money, I don't know. Or maybe they're more likely to pay their taxes, but I think it's two separate things, so. I think our original decision, and still with that.
Anybody have a different perspective?
Only if it were a long-standing history of neglect on that part.
I just know when I was on the Board of Finance years ago, and I won't give out any names, but there were some that year after year after year, and then at the 10th year, they were removed from the list, and then they would be on the list again. To me, that's habitual. I don't, but the point you made, it being a federal program, not a local program, the money is federal, you're right, it wasn't one of the criteria that they, even though we have latitude, so.
I also think that now Patty doesn't let it get like that. He goes to town on them.
No, Patty will take your second favorite child in order to get you to pay your taxes.
Point well taken, somebody may need that money to catch up on the taxes too, I didn't look at it that way. So,
Agree with Alan.
Yeah, which is fine.
So stay the course. Perfect.
For what it's worth to the board, I concur heartily with that decision, having read a lot of these cases. That I know if I had to make a decision about paying my taxes or feeding my family, it would be an easy one. So
But I had to ask the question because I'm
No,
not sure we all do.
I-
Because I have to respond to the public.
I please don't take that as any, I didn't mean any criticism by that to anyone. I just feel strongly that the public is hurting right now and that's the right decision.
So those are the only outstanding policy determinations that George has come across that he and I spoke about that we needed to get the board's perspective on. So I think that's a clear roadmap to the end of the project now. So it's 7:31, so I'd ask for a motion to recess the regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen and convene the town meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, George. All those in favor of recess, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. I'm going to convene the town meeting scheduled for August 19th at 7:30 PM. Amy, are you here? You coming up? Either you or Rebecca. Maybe Mr. Grant, number 2. Oh, okay.
What is that?
Again, it's 7:32. The town meeting is called to order. I'm going to ask the town clerk to please read the town meeting public notice. Would you bring a copy?
Yep, that one. Okay. Town of East Windsor Public Town Meeting Notice. The legal voters of the town of East Windsor are hereby warned that a town meeting will be held at the Town Hall, 11 Rise Street, Broadbrook, Connecticut, and via Zoom on Thursday, August 19th, 2021 at 7:30 PM for the following. Item 1. Consider and discuss the ordinance establishing wetland violation citations and procedures, a means by which the town of East Windsor can effectively enforce the town of East Windsor inland wetlands and water courses regulations, with the implementation of citations and fines for violations and continued non-compliance of the regulations. Item 2, to consider and discuss the ordinance to establish the criteria and process by which certain lands in the town of East Windsor may be classified as open space for the purpose of property taxation, open space classification in accordance with section 12-107E of the Connecticut General Statutes. Item 3, to consider and discuss the renaming the filter beds to trolley crossing. Item 4, to consider and discuss the renaming of the property on Route 140, formerly owned by the Hensel family, to Heritage Park. Item 5, to consider and discuss the renaming the park at the end of Cemetery Road as the Master Sergeant Richard U. Sherman Town Park. Dated at East Windsor, Connecticut, this 12th day of August, 2021. East Windsor Board of Selectmen, Jason E. Bauza, First Selectman, Marie E. D'Souza, Deputy First Selectman, Charles F. Nordell, Selectman, Sarah A. Muska, Selectman, Alan Baker, Selectman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I now ask for a motion to elect the moderator.
Sarah Muska, 25 Maple Avenue. I nominate Jason Bauza as moderator.
Is there-
Maybe we'll second.
Made and seconded. Any further nominations? Any further nominations? Is there a motion to close nominations?
Motion to close nominations.
Motion has been made to close nominations. Is there a second? So the motion was made by Sarah, seconded by
Yep.
Rebecca. Motion was made by Marie, seconded by Rebecca. Any discussion on closing nominations? All in favor of closing nominations, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All in favor of Jason Bauza as moderator, please say aye. Opposed, no. Now I'm going to read the eligibility to vote. So this is going to be a little bit different because we're operating under Connecticut General the language that was included in the budget implementer that allows for hybrid meetings. This is not an easy thing to administer. So for those folks who are joining online, if you are planning to vote on the questions today, please turn your cameras on and please identify yourself when a vote is called. This is kind of the first time we're doing it this way, so it's going to be a little bit bumpy.
I have to close the registration list. Just.
Yeah. Need a vote. At any town meeting other than a regular or special election, or at any meeting of any fire, sewer, or school district, or any other municipal subdivision of any town incorporated by any special act, any person who is an elector of such town may vote, and any citizen of the United States over the age of 18 or more, who jointly or severally is liable to the town, district, or subdivision for taxes assessed against him on an assessment of not less than $1,000 on the last completed grand list of such town, district, or subdivision, or who would be so liable if not entitled to an exemption under Connecticut General Statutes, subdivision 17, 19, 22, 23, 25, or 26 of section 12-81, may vote unless restricted by the provisions of any special act relating to such town, district, or subdivision. Those are the conditions by which people can vote. Amy, we have the list. I don't think we'll need to go into it.
You know,
May I ask for whoever has resolution number 1 to read it and move it?
Number 1, to consider and discuss the ordinance establishing wetland violation citations and procedures, the means by which the town of East Windsor can effectively enforce the town of East Windsor inland wetland and water courses regulations. With the implementation of citations and fines for violations and continued non-compliance of the regulations. Shall the town adopt the ordinance establishing wetland violation citations and procedures? Yes or no? I move the foregoing resolution be adopted.
Rebecca Talabini was second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? I'd like to thank the members of the Wetlands Commission for a number of years of thoughtful work putting this together. It was a long time coming, and the final product, I think, shows it. Any members online who would like to vote, please turn your cameras on. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I'll call a roll online. Mr. Lansner,
Aye.
Mrs. Neal,
Aye.
Mrs. Rodriguez.
Aye.
Thank you. All those opposed, say no. Ordinance is adopted. Who has resolution number 2?
Consider and discuss the ordinance to establish the criteria and process by which certain lands in the town of East Windsor may be classified as open space for the purposes of property taxation, open space classification, in accordance with section 12-107E of the Connecticut General Statute. So the town adopted ordinance establishing open space classification, yes or no? Resolution to be adopted.
Motion made by Albert Grant, seconded by Barbara Sherman. Any discussion? This is another one of those ordinances that has been a long time coming, and it's great to see it get across the goal line. Mr. Grant, thank you for your leadership on that. And I'd also want to recognize Clark Chapin, who was our town planner for a short time, but did a lot of work in that period of time, including getting this ready for a vote this evening. Any further discussion? Members in the audience, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Members online, Mr. Lansner,
Aye.
Mrs. Neal,
Aye.
Mrs. Rodriguez.
Aye.
Members present, opposed. Ordinance is adopted. Resolution number 3.
Consider and discuss the renaming of the Silver Beds to Trolley Crossing. Foregoing resolution be adopted.
Second.
Motion has been made by Scott Tripp, seconded by Alan Baker. Is there any discussion? Being none, members present, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Members online, Mr. Lansner,
Aye.
Mrs. Neal,
Aye.
Mrs. Rodriguez.
Aye.
So carried. Resolution number 4.
Consider and discuss the renaming of the property on Route 140, formerly owned by the Hensel family to Heritage Park. Shall the town rename the property on 140 formerly owned by the Hensel family to Heritage Park? Yes or no?
Motion has been made. Is there a second? Second by Scott? Tom, sorry, it's tough to tell with the mess. Made by Mark Weldon, seconded by Tom Talamini. Any discussion? Members present, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Members online, Mr. Lansner,
Aye.
Mrs. Neal,
Aye.
Mrs. Rodriguez.
Aye.
So carried. Resolution number 5.
To consider and discuss the renaming of the park at the end of Cemetery Road as the Master Sergeant Richard U. Sherman Town Park. Shall the town rename the park at the end of Cemetery Road as the Master Sergeant Richard U. Sherman Town Park? I move the forwarding resolution be adopted.
Second.
Motion has been made by Debbie Talamini, seconded by Barbara Sherman. Is there any discussion? I would just like to say, I think this is a very well-deserved designation for somebody who's done an awful lot for the community in a number of capacities. So, Master Sergeant Sherman, thank you for your service. All those in favor in the room, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Members online, Mr. Lansner,
Aye.
Mrs. Neal. Mrs. Neal, I didn't hear you.
Aye.
Mrs. Neal votes yes. Mrs. Rodriguez.
Aye.
Is there any other business to come before the town meeting?
I motion to adjourn.
Seeing none, a motion is in order. Is there a second? Motion made by Rebecca Talamini, seconded by Tom Talamini. It's non-debatable. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are adjourned at 7:42.
Oh my goodness, you guys such a tax.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we're going to the, like, battle tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah, they'll be here. So,
Nice.
we'll see Saturday night. We'll catch them.
Good to see you. Have a good night.
It's never that easy.
All right, at 7:45, we'll reconvene the meeting of the Board of Selectmen. Our next item of business is a presentation and an update from representatives from the Police Commission. I'm sorry, the Connecticut Trolley Museum. Sorry, Mike, I don't know where that came from. Mike Speciale, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for inviting us. So my name is Mike Speciale, and I hope you can hear me through this mask. I'll try and talk loud, Peg. So I'm a volunteer with the museum. Gina could not be here tonight due to personal business. I'm the chairman of the development committee. And the development committee is truly a development committee. We're trying to do a lot more than raise funds. We're trying to truly transform the museum, which I'll tell you about in a 4-minute presentation. I would like to introduce my partner in crime, Dulcie Giadone. And Dulcie and I have been working together at the museum for nearly 5 years. And Dulcie is our grants administrator. She gets paid what I get paid, which is what you get paid here. And that's the way it is. And Dulcie has a very successful track record with raising funds. She has a history of working with the private nonprofits, mostly in the arts, with civic organizations, both as a paid executive and as a volunteer. So what's the plan? And I have handouts for you, which I'll leave. The Trolley Museum has been a mainstay in East Windsor since 1940. This is our 81st anniversary. So we have big plans here, and we're actually on our way. So these are just more than plans. We've actually taken the first steps to get moving. So I'll read a little bit from this. So what is it that we're trying to do? Our goal is to take an 81-year-old cultural and historic asset in this town and to totally transform it into one of New England's great living history museums, similar to Old Sturbridge Village, Plymouth Plantation, and Mystic Seaport. We aim to be a truly great, outstanding living history museum and a major tourist attraction for New England and beyond. So how are we going to do that, and what is it that we have to do? We have six components here we're working on. One is the railway. Second is the visitor center, the grounds, the organizational structure, trolley car maintenance, and the visitor experience, which is critical. Just to describe the railway and where we are. Our main line runs 1.5 miles. The museum owns its 17-acre main campus. The trolley runs along the old right of way from the old Hartford Springfield line for a mile and a half. We can actually at some point go another mile and a half. We have more than 1.5, including the sidings, miles of track, ballast, 8,000 ties, 133 poles that support the wire that power the trolleys. Much of this equipment material needs to be replaced due to age and wear and tear. That's a lot of ties. That's a lot of track. That's a lot of ballast. And over time, the museum does not have the resources to really keep it up. The visitor center. The visitor center that you see now is built in the 1980s. It needs a makeover. The lobby and gift shop need to be refigured. We need plumbing and lighting efficiencies, a general cosmetic makeover. We're working on right now. We just got a grant from an individual to plan for the renovation of the auditorium. We have an auditorium in there with seats and a stage. That doesn't serve our purposes. The area is probably 3 times the size of this room. If we rehabilitate that, change it, it could be a conference center, a meeting center, a place where we can do business meetings during the day. You can meet over there. We can have birthday parties, we can have educational programs and lectures. 17-acre main campus needs to be landscaped. We've just completed a study. We had money for it. That was to figure out how to put in a drainage system. As soon as we can put in the drainage system, we can put a paved parking lot. Then we can operate all year. Even if the trolleys can't operate during the winter, we can do a whole host of activities in the main structure. The organizational structure. The museum started off as a group of enthusiasts who knew a whole lot about trolley car history. They knew how to operate trolley cars and do all that. But essentially, de facto, it was a club. We have completely changed the way we operate. We want to be just as effective and efficient as the best nonprofits that are out there. So we have now hired, I'll get back to that in a minute. We've hired, well, I'll tell you now, we've hired an executive director. So somebody's running the museum as opposed to a volunteer who's not there. We have changed our bylaws so that they fit the kind of organization we are. And we have added tremendously to our board of directors. It's great that we have people with trolley history on the board. Half the people on the board need to be trolley history people. We need people who know how to get resources, raise money, run an organization, and embrace and understand our mission. Our trolley car restoration, we have a barn that's falling apart. It severely limits what we do. We could have a whole lot of volunteers speeding up the process, doing a better job if we had an adequate facility. And finally, and I don't want to miss this, this is the most important thing, that's the visitor experience. But unless we have our infrastructure in place, we can't really have a valuable, good, high-quality visitor experience. We will have trained docents, we'll have historic reenactors, we have good professional exhibits. We will have an education director who can cater to all this, so high quality. Again, I want you to think of what you see when you go to Sturbridge Village, when you go to Plymouth Plantation. We're going to capture the era of the trolley era, mostly from the 1920s to 1940s with what we do. So right now, we are building up a constituency. We've talked to a lot of people, individuals who are in a position to find resources, give resources, get resources, whatever. We're talking to government officials, at the state, federal level, private corporations, private foundations. A lot has been done recently. We just put in our first paved walkways. Since 1940, we have never had a paved walkway on property at the museum. We restored the historic Isle of Safety that stood in downtown Hartford from 1912 to the 1970s. That's right at the entrance. That's a historic relic artifact. We completely restored that. Thanks to Dulcie, we've raised $200,000 to support specific projects over the past couple of years. And we have a good, strong annual giving program. This is all great to keep us operating the way we are, but we're about to embark on this exciting journey. So I'm going to leave this with you. And Jason, I hope when I come back, in 3 to 5 years, that you'll say, my God, Mike came and made this presentation and he wasn't kidding, because we're gonna get it done. I will, here, I'll just, you can distribute these, I'll start talking. I thank you for your time. If you have any questions, me or Dulcie, be happy to answer them, or you know where to find us at the trolley museum. So thank you all very much. Good to see you back. Okay.
So you're not off the hook yet. So couple of a comment and then a couple of questions. I plan on seeing this happen along the way, not just in 3 to 5 years. My son loves the trolley museum. That is a regular in our outing destination. So I look forward to seeing that unfold. But you can't come to us and tell us what you're doing and then not telling us how we can help. So you and I have had a couple of meetings, and I know what my homework is, but how can the board help?
Well, first of all, the trolley museum was a great unknown to some of the bigger potential funders that were out there. Because the people who came and volunteered were busy putting in ties, replacing the track, running the trolleys, doing that sort of thing. What Dulcie and I brought to the museum were a knowledge of what goes on, the bigger picture, who supports these things. So we were able to collect and gather some resources that we never had before. I will say that I worked at the New England Air Museum as executive director for 29 years. When I came in 1986 to the museum, they had $1,600 in the bank, over $500,000 in debt. They had a building that was completely inadequate, and it was great because here's this great gem, jewel of an organization with great potential. And I came there and I said, wow, you know, I can't do anything wrong here because they're really down and out, they were desperate. So mainly what I'm good at, I think, is encouraging people and getting people to join the cause, to build a team, get everybody enthused and excited, and that's the way we built it up. So we have been working with your esteemed first selectman here. We've had several meetings, and I think Jay understands exactly what it is that we're trying to do. And we are pursuing some possibilities for state of Connecticut funding. We'll be pursuing very shortly some avenues to see if there's federal funding that's available. But, you know, we don't view this as just a sole solution. So Dulcie and I have a lot of work to do with foundations and to go out there and establish relations with people who have the means to either give money or to get money. But again, the whole idea is not just to raise money, it's to produce this great living history museum. We feel that although our attendance on an annual basis before COVID was somewhere around 30,000 people, we can have a whole lot more than that. And we can provide a very great experience. I think history is important. I hope you appreciate the value of the Trolley Museum here in town. But also, I think you probably appreciate the fact that it's languished too long because we just didn't have enough people advocating, you know, to move the place forward. They were doing the day-to-day, weekend, evening, behind-the-scenes volunteer work. So
you want us to become ambassadors for you?
I really would like you to become ambassadors because I think it's a great cause. I think that it would be a great boon to the town. And and if you don't know, the trolley tracks run along what used to be the right of way. There was a spur line. There was an old trolley car company that ran from Hartford to Springfield. You get out by the Isle of Safety in the old State House in Hartford, up along the river, stop at every town, make multiple stops. But when you got to Broadbrook, you could take a spur line, and that spur line would go all the way from where Main Fish is today, all the way out to Rockville. So we're operating on that right of way. That's what we're doing. So we're going to bring all this back. I just want to say also, the average age, I think this is cool. I don't know if that's a professional word, cool. The average age of our operating trolley cars is 104. The oldest is 119 years old. I think that's wonderful that you get to experience what it was like to ride in a vehicle from that's that old. So thank you for your support. You are going to be ambassadors, I hope. You don't come to us, we'll come to you. We're just looking to build up enthusiasm, excitement. That, hey, East Windsor, Connecticut, little old East Windsor is going to be home to a museum on par with Sturbridge or Mystic Seaport or Plymouth Plantation.
Very cool.
Does your right of way extend down to where like the old, like, I guess it was like sort of an amusement park used to be?
Pine Ridge.
Yes.
Yeah, so do you envision, something in the future extending
Well-
or revitalizing that part of it?
We'll be talking to you about that, because if we can extend the line, we can certainly combine it with either walking trails or some kind of outdoor recreational venue and all that. And, the more we connect with other places, the great, we're having an event that's coming up the first Saturday in September. It's called Everything That Runs. And what we're going to be doing is, we're going to have all of our equipment running, people bringing stuff, whether it's antique tractors or whatever. But you're also going to get to go on a trolley, get off at our station, which is by Skylark Airport, and it's going to be a fairly substantial static aircraft display there. So we're kind of combining this stuff. So if we can do stuff like that on a bigger basis, especially as we extend the line, sure, I think that'd be terrific.
What time is that?
Saturday.
It's September 4th.
So it's
It's the
Labor Day
first Saturday,
weekend.
it's the first Saturday in September.
And was it like, is it all day?
It's called Everything That Runs. But Gina does a terrific job here with her events and all that, and I think you appreciate that.
It certainly has been noticed, the work that's been taking place there over the last year and a half. And I'll say a year and a half, because prior to that, it was getting really bad. So I'm glad to hear that you actually have new volunteers that have come forward to include some of the younger people that are coming out to learn about the trolleys that are working there now. I think that's a great start. I think cleaning up of the property itself, especially around that corner there, gives the visibility that improvements are being made, regardless if you do nothing else, if you just clean that one area. And it's been noticed, not only locally, but I know people out of town came, the activities that you're doing there now on a regular basis. I think as you improve, I think your attendance will start improving also.
Well, we're off to a great start. We've been working on this, and the more we do, the faster the pace will pick up, because it does build up excitement. So I would like you sometime to go to my alma mater, go visit the Northern Museum. It took 29 years to do it, but we got it up to the point. It's one of the great aviation museums in the world. But after 29 years, I learned some lessons, so this project will not take 29 years. 27. No, we gotta go quicker than that. We're gonna go quicker than that. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, Mike.
We'll
Very
see you
much appreciate
again
your time.
soon. Okay, bye.
Tax refunds.
Motion to approve tax refunds for the total of $1,430.13.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Public participation. Are there any members of the public here in person who would like to address the board for a second time?
I think you skipped our reports.
I did. I'll come back to
Yeah.
that. Anybody online who would wish to address this a second time? No. Okay. So first off, the news that's fit to print. Effective tomorrow, August 20th, the town of East Windsor will have a mask mandate for any indoor facility where the public may frequent. Exceptions to this will be children who are under 2 years old, anyone who's eating or drinking, and anyone with a valid written exemption from a doctor. This is being issued as part of a regional approach that includes towns within our general area. Area town leaders and I have had discussions about the implementation of this, and we all universally agree. Everybody who is in a municipal CEO role all agrees that the best way to handle this would be for a statewide policy. Absent that, it's incumbent upon us to address things on a regional basis. So we believe that we can better protect public health and economic well-being amongst people and businesses in our communities by acting on a regional basis. So the towns that have been the leaders in pushing this are Windsor Locks, East Windsor, and South Windsor. Manchester has been a participant, East Hartford has been a participant, all of whom will have mask mandates by the end of the weekend. We've also been working with the Capital Regional Council of Governments in the 29 member towns thereof to encourage them all to do the same, and more than half of them will be doing the same thing by the end of the weekend. Also, regional COGs in southeastern Connecticut and in Fairfield County have joined in the effort to encourage a statewide solution to this. Our goals are simple. We want to ensure that children can go to school in person this year, and we want to ensure that additional sector mandates and capacity limits that we all experienced over the last year are not necessary. We saw the detrimental effect that these restrictions had on kids and on businesses in our community, and we want to do whatever we can not to have to revisit those again. The COVID variant is a particularly dangerous one to the unvaccinated. Many of them are children. So the best ways to protect against the variant is to respect social distancing, wear a mask, and get vaccinated when you're able to. We have some good news to share, and I'm looking forward to that. We're grateful to State Representative Jamie Foster for her work in securing state bond funding to replace the spillways at East Windsor Park and at the base of Highland Avenue. These are projects that both need to be done and would otherwise have cost taxpayers in East Windsor more than $1.1 million to do. It's also, I think, the first time, certainly the first time I can recall, that the town of East Windsor got bond funding from the state of Connecticut. So that is great. If I'm wrong about that, it's an honest mistake, but I can't think of another time. On August 11th, I had a video conference with representatives from the Metro Hartford Alliance to discuss economic development opportunities in town. Next month, I'll be hosting them on a tour of East Windsor to showcase properties that may be developed or redeveloped. So I would welcome suggestions on parcels to showcase. I spent some time today driving around just trying to take an inventory of those, but I may very well have missed some. So if anybody has points that they want to make sure I showcase in that, I'm open to that. On August 12th, I had the good fortune of visiting with Nancy Masters to discuss the good work being done at Scout Hall and at the museums on the Green. Mrs. Masters always offers insight into the ways the town can support those two great nonprofits in our community. And that same day, I visited with Lois Hiller at the Warehouse Point Library to discuss the improvements that they've made during the pandemic, as well as their plans for improving services in the future. And they've got some really cool stuff going on down there too. On the 17th, our Erase COVID grant coordinator provided me with an update on the review process for the nearly 110 applications we received from small businesses and nonprofits in the community. We continue to make good progress towards the goal of distributing that grant funding to qualified applications on or about Labor Day. We heard about that today. We are on target for that, which is pretty exciting. On the 18th, which is yesterday, Melissa Maltesi and I joined State Representative Foster for a tour with Executive Director of the Ellington YMCA, Dave Corcelli. As a side note, Dave and I went to high school together. The visit was a productive one, and we're actually hoping to be able to take advantage of some of their amenities to enhance programming options for East Windsor seniors in the near future, particularly around aquatics. We don't have a community pool, and that's 800 feet over the town line, and they're very willing to help us expand some of the services we can offer. So looking forward to that. This coming Saturday, the Broadbrook Fire Department will be celebrating their 125th anniversary with a parade, food trucks, and fireworks display. The event kicks off at 5 p.m. at the old carnival site at the end of Main Street. It'll come down Main Street, up Windsorville Road, and down Reservoir into the park. The fireworks display is scheduled to go off at 9. The parade starts at 5. The waterfront at East Windsor Park will close for the season on Sunday. Although the splash pad will have a school adjusted schedule starting next week and running through Labor Day. So instead of running it's the hours it has, it'll run from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. during the week. We've had 5 summer concerts so far, and we have 3 to go. We'll have Shaded Soul playing at the park on August 26th, starting at 6:30. We will have Ashley Cruz on September 2nd, starting at 6 o'clock. That's both to accommodate family schedules and also because we're starting to chase daylight a little bit. And then the last one for the season will be the Leaf Jumpers on September 9th, also at 6 o'clock. I think the summer concert program has been a very successful one, and I hope we are able to build on that next year. That's what I have, so I would recognize Marie D'Souza.
Okay, everyone can hear me. I first want to start off by expressing my pleasure that we can be public if we choose, or via Zoom if we choose. Unfortunately, a choice is not always available, so please reflect on the crisis in Afghanistan. With all our folks here in the United States and our dislike for policies set by others, we still have choices. I choose to put humanity first. We are better united for our future, so don't hesitate to reach out to others in need. A simple hello, holding the door, or offering a help someone less fortunate, then you can make a difference. I want to thank our military members for their sacrifices for our freedoms and yours. On August 11, 2021, I attended the presentation given by our town assessor Helen Totes at the Senior Center regarding available tax relief programs in East Windsor. This valuable handout was available to take after the presentation, and it actually breaks out everything that's available through the state of Connecticut and town of East Windsor. It breaks out all the veterans information so that you have a better idea if you qualify for any of the benefits. I believe it's been put online since it was originally handed out, but I'll make it part of the minutes if anyone cares to read it. On August 12th, I attended the National Park Service River Trail and Conservation Assistance Program in the absence of our first selectman, Jason Balzer. Representatives from East Long Meadow, Mass, Enfield, East Windsor, along with Stephanie Stroud, the community partner for the National Park Services, were attended. Discussion took place regarding the East Long Meadow, Mass Redstone Rail Trail process and the desire to expand it. Enfield spoke on their objectives and desire to organize a trail along the freight line leading into the south side of East Windsor. East Windsor Board of Selectmen, along with Enfield, has passed a resolution for such prior to that meeting. I have attached the minutes to the virtual Teams meeting for review, so that'll also be online. They basically just went over things that happened in the past in East Long Meadow, and they gave us ideas of what we should do moving forward and what departments to get a hold of. And looking for economic development, because there is one active business along that track, and there is a lease currently up for renewal. So there's some things there, but very interesting. So that also be attached. And then on the 18th, I attended the monthly staff meeting. I too am looking forward to celebrate the Broadwood Fire Department's 25th anniversary event to be held on Saturday, August 21st. I hope to see the community come out for this event. Thank you.
Thank you. That business we talked, is there one business in Enfield, or are they talking about one in?
There's one in East Windsor.
Yep.
And there's one on the Mass line. That one we're not concerned with. The concern with the one that we have, because they're looking to get another 25-year lease on it. So that's some concerns there.
Yeah, that's my understanding is DOT extended that for a year.
Right. But they also have talked to Carol Hall, who was attending the meeting. She's going to set up a meeting with town of Enfield, town of East Windsor, along with our state representatives to meet to see what they can do to help us to move things forward. So, and you've been CC'd on all of the information. So it's here. If anybody cares to take a copy.
Actually saw today a high rail going up the tracks. I passed right in front of me on Old Ellington Road here as I was driving.
Help me out. What's a high road?
So it's a pickup truck that runs on the tracks.
Oh, yeah, that thing's, it's basically it's doing track maintenance. It's
Yeah.
just cleared off the.
Right.
overgrowth.
Yeah, right. I thought that interesting. I'm like, wow, they really pushing up here.
Well, what I thought was interesting, if you know, on Depot Street, where the rail goes across there by that little store.
Yeah.
I had mentioned to someone in town that there was a huge tree from the storm that we had last storm
Yeah.
across the track.
Right.
I don't know if it's important to anyone, but I just gotta let you know. And I was told that it's taken care of by the railroad. And 2 days later, it was gone.
Yeah.
They were in there cleaning it all out, taking all the truck out stuff.
Charlie?
Okay, on August 11th, I attended the police commission meeting with the newly appointed Commissioner Thomas Reardon. The meeting was very short with no important business coming before the board that was discussed in the session. Tomorrow, August 20th, the Connecticut Color Museum will have Who Dat playing live at 6 o'clock. And then on Saturday, they're doing their special Hero and Princess Day, starting at 10 a.m. And everybody else has already talked about the Broadbrook Fire Department anniversary, which is all I have.
Alan,
Thank you. The planning and zoning, I actually missed because I was on vacation, but I did review the minutes. They had to vote new officers with the leaving the resignation of Joe Latin. Just want to one more time say how amazing of a job that he did over the, at least the decade that I know of that he was on that board as chair. It's going to be big hole to fill, but Ann is off to a great start as the new chair. They also brought on Joe Sauerhofer as members. They didn't have any applications to go over, but they did go discussing the accessory dwelling units zone potential to change that zone. And then they also briefly discussed what to do about the new marijuana law and how we may want to, as a town, respond to that. They have more on their next agenda to discuss with that, but they just kind of put all their options out there as what they were going to do, what the possibilities of what we could do. You know, from banning it to doing it to doing something in between. So just, I guess more to come on that. So not much there. I attended the Broadbrook Fire Department Commissioners meeting this week. This first one that I'm liaison on now. They discussed the chief brought up the Warehouse Point call, the fire there, and the letter that Jason had read during our last meeting. He read that for the commissioners there. They also discussed the Plantation Road call that was widely reported on the media, the ATV accident, and that was really a very, very complex and technical rescue, and they are to be commended on getting that done. The chief also reported on the budget, which is on track. Everything seems to be going smoothly there. Then the fire marshal gave his report. He's working through inspections. He did present the board with a list of all the upcoming inspections that are due and the ones that he is doing currently, and as well as they discussed a few that you know, have ongoing issues that need to be resolved. So a lot of work going on there. Then there was a brief general discussion by the board and the chief about the fire marshal vehicle being provided by the town to cover fire marshal business on both sides of town. Of course, there's a MOU needed for that to work out with Warehouse Point, how they want to do it. But Broadbrook Fire Department was very happy, and it was very well received. So more to come on that. And then they, the last thing they discussed was their vehicle replacement, their new truck, which is underway. That's all I have.
thank you, sir. Selectman Muska.
I do not have too much to report on. The Board of Education and the Board of Finance meetings were both canceled. Unfortunately, I was unable to make the veterans meeting because living in an older home now, when we have excessive rain and wind, I have a lot of issues, and this morning as well. Charlie already mentioned the Trolley Museum, having a concert at 6 p.m., $10, and you get a trolley ride. And I'm also looking forward to Saturday, the parade and the festivities, and fingers crossed that the weather holds off. The rain doesn't come, it's the hurricane. That's all that I have.
All right. We'll have a brief executive session to include just the five of us. I can have a motion to go into executive session. Peg, I do not expect that there would be a vote, but there may be.
This time we'll write down what we did.
Yeah, the technology can't be trusted.
Will we go into executive session?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are in executive session at 8:17 p.m.
Where are the fireworks? Are they at the park or are they at the other end of town?
Back there, parking at the middle school.
Right.
9 o'clock.
That's the question.
Any business to come before the board?
No.
Seeing none, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Make a motion, we adjourn our regular meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn at 8:49. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are adjourned.